For more than 30 years, from the late 30s, 10,000 children from poverty-stricken British families were brought to Australia in the name of charity. On arrival, the children were sent to boarding institutions all around the country to begin a new life. One of the shining beacons of the scheme was Fairbridge Farm at Molong, 300 kilometres west of Sydney. The vision behind Fairbridge was that the boys would become farmers, the girls farmers' wives. But a new book now starkly outlines a sordid and disturbing story. The author is the former high-profile public administrator David Hill, who until now has been touted as one of the farm's great success stories. His research reveals a devastating picture of a school where children as young as 4 were molested and forced to work long hours. Despite 2 parliamentary inquiries in the past decade, here and in Britain, only now are the victims finally breaking their silence en masse. Deborah Cornwall reports.
It's more than 3 decades since Fairbridge Farm finally closed its doors. This derelict estate in country New South Wales, once home to more than 1,000 British children, shipped out on the promise of a new life and a place in the sun.
There was this idea that they could take the wretches from the slums of England and make them tall-limbed, toiling in the sun.
It's only now, well into middle age, some of the Fairbridge children are finally beginning to give up their terrible secrets.
I would cry till I felt I was going to break inside. I'd curl up in a fetal position. I can remember curling up in the corner and just wanting to die as a child.
Woman I'll never forget for the rest of my life, and have to be the most sadistic person I have ever come across. Not just to me, but to quite a number of the kids.
Kingsley Fairbridge had a good dream. His dream was great to have, places like this for children. But believe me, he would have rolled over in his grave if he had seen what was happening to us.
They are soon on their way to the Fairbridge Farm at Molong, one of a series of farm schools founded by the late Kingsley Fairbridge, a Rhodes Scholar who conceived the idea whilst at Oxford 40 years ago.
Exporting Britain's child waifs out to the colonies with schemes like Fairbridge was big business by the mid-20th century, with children as young as 4 sent off across the globe to work the land for the betterment of the empire.
With shipping a little easier, Australia is getting more and more welcome migrants who are greeted by familiar sights and sounds.
Not all of the children were orphans.
We were a very poor family. My mum was a single parent, and she was attracted by the promise that Fairbridge would pay for us to come to Australia, accommodate us and send us to give us an education she couldn't.
Fairbridge believed it was rescuing the children from bad and irresponsible parents.
Parents were persuaded to sign away their rights as parents, a lot of them sacrificing their children in the belief that Fairbridge's promise would give their children a much better life than they could.
Fairbridge Farm was sponsored on the grace and favour of British royalty, the aristocracy treating the children to high tea and housing them on a luxury estate before they were launched on a journey of a lifetime.
Oh, I loved it. It was a child's dream. It would, even as an adult, I would love it.
And of course, it was all in stark contrast to the thud of reality when we got to Fairbridge and we got put on a train in Sydney and taken over the mountains, and it was cold and bleak, and we arrived in pre-dawn darkness.
Few children have forgotten the day they arrived at the farm school. Its Dickensian dormitories, freezing showers, fly-blown food and relentless chores. Some to this day remember happy times on the farm, but for many there was far worse to come.
Well, there she is, Smiley.
Back to Fairbridge again, eh?
Yeah, look, it looks very much the same.
But it wasn't until last year when David Hill teamed up with his old classmate Ian Smiley Bailiff to research his book, the full horror of what really happened at Fairbridge began to emerge.
Old chapel. There's the old bakehouse. I really had no idea the magnitude of this until I listened to the kids' stories.
Oh dear me, look at that. How different.
And still how the same.
Yeah.
I was the lucky one because I got to Fairbridge later, stayed there for a shorter period, and most importantly, I had a mum. Smiley was typical of the Fairbridge kid. He got there at 8, he spent about 9 years there.
You got a flogging for it?
And most of the terrible things that most of the terrible failures of Fairbridge, Smiley encountered.
When I first came here, I would have been probably about that high.
Ian Bailiff was terrorised at Fairbridge and grew up believing his parents had abandoned him. It was only 10 years ago, when he tracked down his mother in England, he discovered she had tried for years to get her children back, but Fairbridge had blocked his parents at every turn, insisting the children were happier without them.
We weren't happy here. I was here in this cottage, in this particular building we're standing in now. Why would I be happy? He used to flog the living daylights out of us.
Lenny McGee remembers, as a small boy, trying to make the best of it at Fairbridge, but his cottage mother was just as frightening.
She should never have been on the farm school. She was an elderly lady, she was an alcoholic, and she used to beat the children, and we were very mistreated. I had no mother, no father, no one to complain to, and we were being brutalised by this awful woman.
For Mary O'Brien, it was her after-school carer who took her into his family home to work as a domestic at 14.
How do you explain when you go to bed at night and you're trying to cocoon yourself and you're thinking, is he going to come in tonight? Is he going to come in tonight?
Mary O'Brien is also one of many who've spoken for the first time about the sexual abuse at Fairbridge. For her, it's been a shock to discover so many suffered the same treatment, but says the most heartbreaking story is that of Vivian Bingham.
She arrived at Fairbridge a few months after I did. She was the most delightful little 4.5-year-old that you can imagine. There's not many things that I will become emotional about, unfortunately. She was beautiful.
He molested me when I was 5 years old. And I do remember sitting on the steps and at night time when I went to bed rocking backwards and forwards in my bed. I think it was because I just didn't know what was going on and I was scared. So I rocked backwards and forwards to try and calm myself, I suppose.
I think the Vivian story typifies the worst of what you can do to children.
Oh, we used to call her the Wicked Witch of the West. I was only tiny, so I used to wet the bed, so that was just natural for a child. And she put my head down the toilet and flushed the chain.
Before she left England, yes, we have all of the reports about what a bright and happy child she is. Within months of arriving at Fairbridge, the reports are saying that she's a problem child, that she's sullen, she's incommunicative. Small wonder. Can you put some blue written down into there?
For David Hill, watching his son Damien grow up as he wrote the book was especially painful.
I know. Well, I did too, but...
Even beyond the appalling abuse, he says, it was the complete lack of care or affection for the Fairbridge children that has distressed him the most.
Damien turned 5 while I was writing the book and increasingly became a reference point as I realised there were many kids younger than him when they were put on boats, sent out to Australia, and never had a parent, never saw a parent again.
I was never encouraged. We were always demeaned. We were constantly told that we were there because we were gutter snipes, we were slum children, we would never ever make anything of ourselves.
Curiously, Fairbridge had made much of the educational opportunities they offered their young charges, even ensuring they passed IQ tests before they were selected. Yet once at Fairbridge, many of the children's grades dropped dramatically, with more than 40% of them deemed, in the language of the day, mentally retarded or slow learners.
A typical Fairbridge kid, when they left Fairbridge, they had no educational qualifications. Close to half of them couldn't read or write and still can't. IQ tests of the Fairbridge kids before they were sent to Molong School, and
Ian Bailiff, who has an IQ well above average, didn't learn to read until he was well into his 30s.
You know, I sort of I bundled along, through life. It never sort of, I didn't go telling too many people. It was a bit embarrassing, admittingly.
David Hill says his search through the Fairbridge archives confirms many of the worst abuses at the farm were well known at the time, yet no one acted. He says as early as 1956 the British authorities had condemned Fairbridge as unfit for children. But when threatened with the intervention of the Fairbridge president, former Australian Governor-General the Duke of Gloucester, British authorities overturned the ban within days.
Fairbridge was able to get the British government to back down because of its huge political muscle among the upper echelons of British society, including royalty.
In the past decade, there have been 2 parliamentary inquiries into the child migrant scheme, both here and in England. Former children's institutions admitted to the inquiries what they'd done to children was wrong, even barbaric. But the Fairbridge Foundation, which was established after the farm closed in 1976, told the Senate the foundation is unaware of any unsafe, improper or unlawful treatment occurring at the Fairbridge Farm School. Do you think that Fairbridge misled the Senate in making that assertion?
No, I don't think they misled the Senate. I don't think we deliberately misled the Senate. I regret now, as I say, that I confirmed that. I don't actually know whether I confirmed it, but certainly I regret that we made that statement in our written submission.
The Foundation chairman, John Kennedy, concedes the new claims in the book are distressing. Yet he maintains the Foundation has yet to see any hard evidence of widespread abuse of children at Fairbridge.
If they are true, they worry me greatly, disturb me greatly, of course they do. I am not aware that they are true.
I was there, I know what happened. I don't have to read documents, I don't have to, nothing like that. I know where it happened because I was there and I saw it, I felt it, and it hurt. And that is a fact.
They don't want to know. They should know, but they don't want to know. They just want to turn a blind eye to it. But they can't now because a lot of us are talking. So they can't shut us up now. I'm not 4.5-year-old anymore.
Deborah Cornwall with that report on the dark side of British child migration from the late 30s to the early 70s, and that report also produced by Deb Masters. In its